Thanks a lot for joining us this morning, Chabisi. One would say that particularly the smelting industry becomes affected by this, and just how affected is it?
Well, since last night when we introduced stage 6, or when Eskom introduced stage 6, basically the entire smelting industry, the ferro alloy industry, had to switch off as per instruction of Eskom. It is covered in the policy that we need to cut off when it gets to stage 6, which is something we've never seen before. But basically, we have so far lost 12 hours of production. As you would know, that we're running on very lean budgets and we're already on tight operating budgets. And now, when you cut 12 hours of production, you basically are cutting the production output, and then the costs go up. So on an already very difficult operating market, we sit with a situation where production has to be cut, and we still have to incur the fixed cost of running the operations going forward. So it's a significant blow to us as Ferro Alloy Producers of South Africa.
Well, I mean, on the other side of it, I remember a conversation that you guys were having earlier on in the year, speaking about how you simply cannot afford any tariff increases. And in fact, you are calling for a concession when it comes to tariffs, simply because of the amount of power that is being utilized by the industry in itself, and the amount of jobs that will be impacted if costs continue to rise where power is concerned. I think at about 18,000 or so jobs that were directly affected, and about 129,000 jobs that were indirectly affected. So that's just on a tariff increase. Now let's talk about the jobs that may be lost as a result of now having stage 6 load shedding and not having any form of production.
Basically, when you're having stage 4 and stage 6 is being implemented, the job losses, you basically fast-tracking the imminent demise of the industry, which without government intervention can only happen much quicker. So things like this will actually make the job losses happen much quicker. The same amount of job losses will happen much quicker. But we, as the ferro alloys industry, we believe that we have solutions that we can sit around the table with Eskom and Labour.
Great. What kind of solutions are we talking here? I'm glad that you've got solutions this morning. What are you proposing?
We definitely have solutions, but if you can just look at what is currently happening now in the country, this time of the year is normally when Eskom is doing their maintenance. Now, Eskom has already started with their maintenance, which should have been in full swing in the middle of the month. Now, added to that, you now have the rain coming in, and basically it's a perfect storm, which is what we're sitting with. And I really sympathize with Eskom, and Eskom has done well to take us to this point. But however, we've brought solutions or proposals to Eskom early in the year, already in June, to say we as industry, we're willing to come to the table and come to some sort of an agreement to try and allow Eskom to do the necessary maintenance that is required, because you cannot run this vehicle forever. It needs to stop and be maintained. Now, this vehicle has not been maintained. As a result, Eskom has been operating on a very narrow reserve margin of power, which allows very little room for failure or a power station collapse. Now, when a power station collapses and the margin is very low, that's when you see load shedding. Now, we're saying the switching off of power stations has to be planned, especially the old plant. The old plant is your older power stations. They need to be switched off at a planned basis, switch off longer, and the industry can cut back to make sure to allow Eskom to do the necessary maintenance so that the old plant can come back online. And the new plant, we know the challenges with the new plant, that's Kusile and Medupi. There's teething issues there, there's design issues there, which is understandable. But we as industry want to participate and say we want to be part of the solution.
Well, clearly they're not listening to you, because, I mean, leadership from Eskom was saying just yesterday about how that maintenance at Eskom had not taken place for over a decade. So I don't know how long you've been speaking to Eskom for, but if leadership is coming in and saying, listen, we failed to actually implement maintenance for about 10 years, that says something about the conversations that seem to have been one way from industry perspective as opposed to Eskom.
Well, as industry, we are now at a point where we're saying we need to come out clear. Eskom wanted to do maintenance. Eskom wants to do maintenance. Eskom is committed. Eskom is capable of sorting out our power issues. However, we have the political strong arm as well, which you need to understand. The political strong arm says, do not switch off the lights. Keep the lights on at all costs. Now, that puts Eskom in a very difficult position, because they cannot switch off. Now, Eskom would then have to run the very expensive diesel generators, which is 3 times the amount of normal electricity cost, which cranks up their cost base. So Eskom is now in a very difficult position where the methodology of saying keep the lights on at all costs is very dangerous, and it's what it's ended up to bring us into this position in the first
one
place.
would say that there's clearly no political will in order for us to actually salvage the matters. You're saying that if politics are saying keep the lights on the other side of it, logic is saying we need to actually have routine maintenance. That means that certain conversations are disconnected in there. But we're going to leave it there for this morning. Joining us at Chabisi Motloung.
Thank you very much.
Just giving us the insights in terms of how is it that the power cuts are actually affecting the smelting industry.